The stories always make it sound romantic. Immortality, strength beyond mortal men, a life without fear of time, but they never tell you about the hunger. The way it gnaws at you every second, the way you stop seeing people as people and start seeing them as prey. I didn't want this life. I didn't choose it. And for centuries, I thought there was no way out, no cure, no hope. Then I learned the truth. The key to undoing the curse wasn't in holy water or wooden stakes. It was in the blood of a monster, even we feared. So I hunted him, and what I found changed everything. Hollow Pines Forest, midnight. The night was colder than it had any right to be. Not the kind of cold that just chills your skin. This one seemed to crawl into your bones and set up camp, like it knew it belonged there. The wind whispered through the trees of hollow pines, dragging the scent of pine sap, wet earth, and something metallic. Blood. Always blood. I'd been tracking him for weeks. The werewolf, my only lead, my only chance. I didn't care that my kind feared his kind. I didn't care that vampire lore painted them as unpredictable nightmares with claws, like scythes and jaws strong enough to crush steel. Fear didn't matter to me anymore. Hunger didn't matter. All that mattered was the cure. The forest floor was a patchwork of shadows and moonlight. Each step a calculated risk. I could hear him moving, heavy, deliberate, confident. He didn't know I was here yet. That gave me a few precious seconds before everything turned violent. My fangs ached, not from hunger, but from tension. This wasn't about feeding Dot. This was about ending something. Ending me. The stories say werewolves smell fear. That's not entirely true. They smell everything. Sweat, adrenaline, the shift in your heartbeat when your mind changes from fight to flight. Mine had shifted long ago. There was no flight left in me, just fight. I caught sight of him between the trees. Massive, shoulders like boulders, fur glinting silver in the moonlight. His breath came out in slow clouds. He was calm, like he owned this place. Like he'd already decided I wouldn't be leaving it alive. When his eyes locked on mine, it was like two storms colliding. He tilted his head, sniffing the air, and his lips peeled back to reveal teeth that could unmake a man in seconds. One tooth, though, one was different. Larger, darker, almost vein-like. It carried something alive inside it. The vein tooth. I stepped into the clearing. No more hiding. His growl started low, like the rumble before a landslide. "You've been following me?" His voice was half human, half animal, jagged on the edges. "I need something you have," I said. "What makes you think you'll leave with it?" "I don't plan on leaving at all," I answered, and then there was no more talking. He was on me in a heartbeat, claws flashing. I dodged the first strike, felt the second tear through my coat and raked across my ribs. Pain bloomed hot and sharp, but I shoved it aside. My counter was quick. Claws to his chest, a spin to get behind him, but he moved like a hurricane. Every blow I landed was matched by one of his. Every feint met with brutal precision. Minutes blurred into something primal. I stopped thinking about strategy and just moved. Duck, slash, leap back, press forward. My senses drowned in the scent of wet fur, the taste of my own blood, the pounding rhythm of our bodies colliding. A lucky opening. He lunged too far, his momentum carrying him past me. I slammed into his side, drove us both into a tree so hard it split. My hand closed around his throat, but he bit down on my forearm. The pain was blinding. I roared and twisted, driving my other hand into his jaw. Something cracked. The vein tooth came loose. He staggered back, one hand to his face, shock flashing in those amber eyes. I didn't hesitate. My claws sliced across his neck, deep enough that the blood came in a violent rush. His knees hit the ground. He gurgled something I couldn't hear over the pounding in my skull. Then he fell, and the forest went still again. I stood there for a long time, staring at the body, chest heaving. The tooth lay in the dirt, faintly glowing, like it was alive. I knelt and picked it up. It burned my skin instantly. A searing, holy kind of pain, but I didn't drop it. Because in that moment, I knew this was it. This was the key, and I was willing to burn for it. My underground lab. I carried the tooth like it might vanish if I blinked, wrapped in gauze that smoked faintly where it touched the enamel. By the time I reached the freight elevator behind the butcher shop, The gauze was charred through, and the thing pulsed in my hand like it had its own heartbeat. 3 floors down, the doors grated open to the hum of generators and the sterile glare of my sanctuary. My lab wasn't pretty, just steel counters scarred by acids, hospital lamps on articulated arms, shelves stacked with glass vials, some labeled, some not. The air reeked of alcohol, rust, and old blood. I laid the werewolf tooth in a dish under the hood. Up close, it wasn't smooth. Veins of darker material ran through the enamel-like roots, and they moved, slow, pulsing, almost like they were alive. My fingertip hovered an inch away, and even then my nail turned pale, skin tightening as if my blood didn't want to go near it. I chipped a sliver off with a diamond bit. The filings smoked instantly, singing a high note I felt in my jaw. I caught them in a chilled vial, then melted them over a blue flame. The tooth shivered when the drop finally fell. It was heavy and black as mercury. I mixed it with my own blood, just a drop, then added silver ions, UV agitation, and a synthetic carrier that could slip through a vampire's defenses. My hands moved on instinct. Pipette, stir, heat, cool. Each step was a prayer I didn't believe in. The test subjects were behind glass, rats, feral cats, even a pig from the slaughterhouse upstairs. All turned into my kind with microdoses of my curse. Most had gone feral. Some still recognized me. All of them were proof of what I'd done. Trials 1 through 10 were failures. One mixture foamed before I could load it. Another curdled in the syringe. One set the rat smoking from the inside until it lay down quietly and stopped breathing. I recorded every failure because forgetting them would make me a liar. By trial 12, my hands were shaking. I bit my wrist until the tremor stopped, then worked slower. Less silver, longer UV exposure. A colder quench in spring water I'd kept for years, without knowing why. When it settled, the serum was violet, the color of evening just before the streetlights flicker on. I chose the oldest rat, the one that had been first to take food from my hand. Her ear was notched, her fur patchy. I slid the needle into the skin of her tail and pressed the plunger. She twitched. Then her eyes shifted. The red glaze cracked, revealing brown. Her chest expanded with a breath that wasn't hunger. It was need. For air her heart started again. I could hear it. Clumsy, human, she squeaked. Not the guttural rasp of a predator, but a simple, ordinary squeak. I opened the cage. She didn't attack. She brushed her whiskers against my knuckle and went to the food dish, eating like she was meant to. I slid down the wall, laughing once before the sound cracked in half. 11 failures and 1 miracle. But I knew my kind wouldn't line up for injections. They'd kill me for even holding this. So I made it a weapon, a cure they wouldn't see coming. I laid out the parts. Carbon tubing, titanium collars, micropressure canisters, stabilizing fins, a tranquilizer dart that could pierce dead flesh and deliver salvation straight into the vein. When I was done, I held the dart up to the light. The violet shimmer looked alive. The little rat's heart still thudded in the corner, steady and sure. This could end it. Not just for me, but for everyone like me. All I had to do was find them. The weapon, the dart sat on my workbench, like it was daring me to fire it. The violet shimmer inside seemed to move in slow spirals, alive in a way that made my skin itch. It was beautiful and dangerous, like holding lightning in a glass vial. I'd built weapons before, silver-tipped stakes, UV grenades, even a spring-loaded blade I could hide in my sleeve for close work. But this was different. This wasn't for killing. This was for undoing. And that, in our world, was far more dangerous. The challenge wasn't just making the serum work inside a vampire system. It was getting it there. Dead tissue rejects most things on contact. You can cut it, burn it, tear it apart, but getting something into the bloodstream takes precision. Too shallow, and it won't spread. Too deep, and you risk shattering bone. I needed a delivery system with enough punch to pierce our hardened skin, but gentle enough to keep the serum intact. That's why I chose a tranquilizer platform. High velocity wasn't the answer. Controlled pressure was. On the bench, I laid out the components like an altar offering. Carbon fiber shaft, light and rigid. Titanium collar to keep the tip from bending. Needle forged from tempered steel with a silver coating. just enough to make the puncture irresistible to a vampire's healing reflex. Micro-pressure canister for a silent, instantaneous injection. I'd worked the balance down to fractions of a gram. If the dart flew wrong, the serum could spill, and that violet liquid was worth more than every drop of blood in my veins. Once the dart was finished, I turned my attention to the launcher. I wasn't using an off-the-shelf tranquilizer gun. Those are made for zookeepers, not hunters of the night. This had to be custom. I stripped an old crossbow frame for the grip and stock, mounted a pneumatic firing system inside, and tuned the trigger to a hair's tension. No loud pops, no bright flashes, just the faint hiss of salvation leaving the barrel. When I loaded the dart for the first time, my hand stilled. I realized this was it. The moment I crossed from theory into action. Once I fired this into another vampire, there was no going back. They'd know I had something that could end us all. That's when I started testing on live targets, not vampires. I couldn't risk a real encounter yet, but carcasses I pulled from the slaughterhouse upstairs. Cow hides, pig skins, even deer I bought from a black market butcher. Dead flesh behaves differently from living, but it told me what I needed to know about penetration, depth, and delivery spread. On the third test, I hit a lung cavity perfectly. The serum spread in a beautiful ripple pattern, reaching every channel it could. I imagined it flowing into a vampire's dead veins, waking them up, forcing their heart to remember its purpose. But that's when I discovered something unexpected. While cleaning the chamber of the dart, I noticed residue in the shape of branching lines, fractals, almost like root systems. I tested the serum on blood samples I'd drawn from my own donors over the years. When it hit infected blood, it didn't just clean it, it created a chain reaction. One drop cleared the whole sample. If that effect carried over in a living or unliving subject, it meant one thing: curing one vampire might cure every vampire they ever turned. A bloodline cleanse. The implications were enormous. I could end entire nests with one shot. I could undo centuries of infection in hours. But it also meant my target list just got narrower. I didn't need to cure everyone. I just needed to work my way upstream, and that meant finding the one who made me. I thought about his face, though I'd only seen it once. Ancient, cold eyes like frozen tar. He'd bitten me as if it were an afterthought, a casual cruelty, then left me writhing in an alley, changing under a moon that seemed too close. I never knew his name, but every rumor about old bloodlines led back to him. The idea formed quick and sharp in my mind. If he was the head of my bloodline, curing him could collapse it entirely, me included. That didn't scare me, it gave me hope. So I loaded the dart again, slung the weapon over my shoulder, and packed 3 spares in a case lined with lead and velvet. I stood in front of the mirror, not to see my reflection, because I couldn't, but to remember why I was doing this. I wasn't arming myself for war. I was arming myself for the end. The truth, finding him, was never going to be easy. Not because he was hiding, but because everything about him was built on rumor, shadow, and the kind of fear that makes even the oldest vampires forget how to speak. I started with the bloodlines I'd already cured. Each time I fired the dart into a vampire and watched their eyes shift from crimson to human, I'd get names. Whispers, broken memories of the night they were turned. And always, buried somewhere in their retelling, was the same silhouette. A tall figure draped in black. Eyes like pits that swallowed firelight. Voice so low you felt it in your ribs before you heard it. That was him, my sire. Weeks bled together in the hunt. I traveled through back alleys where the air reeked of old blood, through collapsed cathedrals where nests slept under rotting altars, through abandoned subway tunnels with walls clawed by things that had never been human. Every stop brought me closer. Every cure pulled another thread in the web, unraveling the whole design. By the time I reached the eastern mountains, I'd pieced it together. He wasn't hiding in some crumbling ruin like most elders. No, he'd built himself a fortress. Black stone, iron gates, torches burning with cold fire that gave no heat. The kind of place that didn't just keep enemies out, it made them never want to approach in the first place. I stood at the base of those gates, my weapon slung across my back, the violet dart loaded. My heart didn't beat, but my chest felt tight anyway. This was it. All the nights spent hunting, all the faces I'd watched change back to human. It all led here. The gates opened without me touching them. I stepped inside. The interior was silent, but not empty. Shadows moved like they had weight. The walls dripped with a black condensation that smelled faintly of iron. My footsteps echoed on stone polished by centuries of things pacing here. And then I saw him. He sat on a throne of obsidian at the far end of the hall. No crown, no robe, just a figure carved out of night. His skin was pale as frost, his hair long and black, his eyes to voids rimmed with a faint glow like dying embers. "You've been busy," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. "I've been cleaning up your mess," I answered. That made him smile, slow and cruel. "You think you've been saving them? But what do you think happens when the hunger is gone and all that's left is memory? Do you think they'll forgive themselves? Or you?" "I don't care about forgiveness," I said. "I care about ending this." "Ending." He leaned forward. "There is no ending. You are what you are. Even if you change their flesh, you cannot change what they've done. You cannot undo the monster they've been." "I can try." I raised the weapon, my finger brushing the trigger. His eyes locked on it. "Do you even know what you are doing, little fledgling? Do you know whose blood runs in your veins? Every vampire you've cured has only led you closer to me, because I am the root, the first dot, the king of all vampires." The weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. If he was telling the truth, then shooting him wouldn't just cure me. It would cure every vampire on earth, every bloodline, dot every nest. All of them. "Kill me," he said, "and you erase an entire kingdom. Billions of years of evolution, undone in seconds." "Good," I said, and squeezed the trigger. The dart hissed through the air. He didn't move. It sank into his chest, just above the heart. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his eyes widened, not in pain, but in surprise. "You," he started, but the word fractured. His body jerked, hands clawing at the dart. And then the light spread. Violet veins racing across his skin, pulsing, sinking deeper. I felt it before I saw it, a wave moving through the world. Every vampire connected to him shuddered. Some screamed, others collapsed. Far away, in cities and villages and dens across the earth, bloodlines shattered. Hearts restarted, fangs dissolved. He looked at me one last time, and for just a second, he almost looked human. Then he fell forward, hitting the stone with a sound that echoed forever. I stood over him, the weight of what I'd done pressing down like a second sky. I wasn't sure if the world was better for it, but I knew one thing. It was different. The pulse. The moment the dart sank into his chest, the world changed. Not just in the room, not just in the fortress, everywhere. It started as a vibration in my bones, a deep, steady hum that rattled my teeth and made the air taste like static. Then the walls groaned, and a pressure rolled through the hall like the first breath before a storm. Messiah's body convulsed, his pale skin threaded with violet veins that pulsed in rhythm with the hum. But the sound wasn't only in my ears, it was in my head, in my blood. And then I realized, it wasn't just me feeling it. Through whatever thread still tied me to him, I felt the others. Vampires all over the world, in slums and palaces, in cathedrals and nightclubs, in the gutters and the penthouses. I felt them drop to their knees, heard their gasps as their chests heaved like drowning men finally breaking the surface. Some screamed, others sobbed. A few laughed, short, confused bursts of sound. The hunger that had ruled them for centuries was just gone. I staggered forward, my knees threatening to give. It was like being torn apart and stitched back together at the same time. My heart lurched once, twice. Then it kept going. That steady drum I hadn't heard since before I was turned. I put my hand to my chest. The warmth blooming there was almost unbearable. I didn't know whether to clutch it or tear it out just to make the sensation stop. My sire, the so-called king, was on his side now, his breath ragged, his face twisting between rage and something dangerously close to relief. His eyes were no longer those bottomless pits. They were human. "You've killed us," he rasped. "No," I said, my voice raw. "I've given you back what you stole from all of us." He tried to speak again, but whatever power had held him for so long was gone. He coughed once, an ordinary mortal cough, and then went still. Not dead, just human. The hum faded, replaced by a silence so deep it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. And then, sound returned. 1,000 small human noises from beyond the gates. Footsteps, cries, shouts. I walked out into the courtyard and saw them. Dozens of figures stumbling in from the forest, the road, the mountains. Some clutched their heads, others held their chests. Their eyes darted everywhere like they were seeing the world for the first time. One woman fell to her knees in front of me. Her fangs were gone, her lips trembling. What have you done to me? I cured you, I said. But even to my own ears, it didn't sound like an answer. Some of them smiled through tears. Others glared at me with a hatred that burned hotter than any I'd seen before. I understood it, because while I had freed them from the hunger, I had also returned every memory of what they'd done under its control. Every scream, every kill, every betrayal. That was the weight they'd have to carry now. My own memories pressed down on me just as hard. Faces I'd drained, voices I'd silenced, centuries of choices I couldn't undo. My chest ached with the heartbeat I'd fought to get back, but it didn't make me feel lighter. It made me feel responsible. Somewhere far off, I could still sense the last flickers of the chain reaction, entire bloodlines collapsing in on themselves, not in death, but in transformation. The world's predators had been turned back into prey, and the prey, well, they'd have to decide what came next. I looked down at the weapon in my hands. The dart was empty now, the serum gone. My hand shook as I ejected the spent casing. It clinked against the stones and rolled to a stop by my sire's foot. He didn't move. He just lay there, breathing. Part of me wanted to finish it, to make sure he couldn't ever take this away from us. But another part of me knew that killing him now would make me no better than he was. He'd live, weak, mortal, forced to walk the same sunlit streets as the people he once hunted. That was punishment enough. The courtyard filled with more of the newly cured. Some looked at me like a savior, others like a demon. I couldn't blame them for either, because the truth is, I didn't save the world. I just changed it, and now, I had to live in it. Epilogue. It's been 3 months since the shot. 3 months since the hum in my bones stopped. Since my heart started beating again. Since I woke to a sunrise I could actually look at without burning. I thought that morning would feel like victory. It didn't. The light hurt my eyes, not from the heat, but from its honesty. It showed me the cracks I'd ignored, the dust on the world I'd once thought perfect when I was a predator. And it showed me faces. Too many faces. In memory, if not in reality. People whose lives I'd ended before I ever dreamed there could be a way back. Everywhere I go now, there are whispers. Some call me a savior, some a murderer. I've been chased out of towns by mobs with torches and welcomed into others with bread and blankets. There's no pattern to it. Humanity is complicated like that. The newly cured scatter like dry leaves. Some try to start over, find jobs, reconnect with families, blend back into the world they left behind. Others don't handle it so well. They can't live with what they've done. They wander, they drink. Some end their own lives rather than face the weight of their past. And then there are the ones who come looking for me. Some want to thank me. Some want to kill me. All of them want answers I don't have. I keep moving. Not because I'm afraid. I've faced worse than what's out there now. But because standing still feels wrong. I spent centuries in the shadows, waiting for the next night, the next kill. Now, every sunrise feels like borrowed time, and I can't waste it in one place. The weapon stays with me, though the dart is gone. I've thought about dismantling it, about throwing the pieces into different oceans, so no one could ever rebuild it. But part of me knows that if I could make it once, someone else could too, for better or worse. I haven't seen my sire since that night. He disappeared into the world like smoke in the wind. Sometimes I wonder if he's living quietly, finally tasting life the way it was meant to be lived. Or if he's out there gathering those who hate me, plotting something I can't see yet. Either way, it doesn't matter. I made my choice, and I'll live or die with it. Life as a human again is strange. I can feel the cold now. Food tastes like more than just texture. Sleep is unpredictable. Sometimes I drift off easily. Other times, I lie awake listening to my own heartbeat, still half afraid it'll stop. And there's hunger, too. Not for blood, but for connection, for people. I find myself lingering in markets, watching strangers haggle over bread, sitting in bars, listening to drunks argue about nothing. It's like learning a language I once knew but forgot. But there's another hunger under that, one I don't talk about. A whisper in the back of my skull when the night is too quiet. It asks if I did the right thing, if the world is safer without us, or if I just made it softer, weaker. I've seen what humanity does without monsters to blame. They make their own. I've had to kill again since then. Humans, this time. People who decided that the newly cured were easy prey. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't regret it either. Maybe that means the monster isn't completely gone. Or maybe it means being human doesn't make you good. It just makes you responsible. Some nights, when the sky is clear and the moon hangs low, I walk until the city lights fade and the dark feels endless. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't killed the werewolf, if I hadn't found the tooth, if I hadn't taken the shot. I try to imagine still being what I was, and I can't. Not because I've forgotten, I never will, but because I've seen what it's like to breathe without hunger, to stand in the sun, to have a heartbeat and know it's mine. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe the world will heal, maybe it'll burn. But whatever comes, I'll face it with both eyes open, because I'm not a monster anymore. I'm just a man. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm free.